Wondering what the F has happened to your body and your life? You're in the right place, my friend. Welcome to Season 3 of Transforming 45, where we dive into the incredible stories of how brilliant humans are navigating the midlife squeeze with courage, passion, and a healthy dose of humor. Don't miss out on any of our heart-led episodes. Hit the subscribe button, leave a 5-star review, and if you're inspired, share an episode you love with a friend. It means more to me than I can express that you're choosing to spend time here and sharing our message of midlife revolution. So let's get into it. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Transforming 45. I don't know that my heart has been this full at the beginning of an episode in a really long time. I really am so excited to welcome Carolyn Taylor to the show. She is a comedian, a choreographer, a Pisces with Leo rising, and the creator of I Have Nothing, and co-creator and showrunner of the Baroness von Sketch show, and general bringer of joy to the world. Carolyn, thank you for being here today, and welcome to the show.
Wow, what an intro. Thank you, Lisa. It's really good to be here.
Yeah. And I am Taurus with Leo rising also.
Oh, interesting. Do you know what your moon is?
Yeah, Leo.
Oh, no, you're Leo rising, but your moon. Do you know that?
No, I don't.
Worth looking into. Really important. I don't know how to figure it out. I can only figure out risings, but just anyway, look into it.
Okay, I will do. I need to go. Do you know Chani Nichols?
Of course.
Okay, so I have her astro planner. So I just need to go back because she works that all out for you when.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You get your moon and then suddenly things start to make sense.
Yes, I will do that right away.
It's
also
order of business. Everyone listening, look up your moon as well. It's really going to help. Okay.
Perfect. It also is not lost on me that today is Imbolc.
Yes.
Yes. And when Anna scheduled this for this day, I was like, this is the most perfect thing when we are headed back to the light. The darkest part of the year is behind us. We are planting the seeds of joy and headed towards the light. So I can't imagine a better way than this to do today.
Truly. I mean, the other day we haven't had sunshine. I mean, there was like one day of sunshine, I think, was it days ago? Yeah. But just that feeling of like, oh God, why does the future feel so bleak? Why is it's like, oh, right, because everything is so bleak. And
yeah,
it's hard to remember. And so I always think like when you hit solstice, it's that you're running into the darkness. You touch the end. It's a marathon, and now you have to run another marathon back, but at least you're on your way back. Like
yes.
The halfway mark. And now we're at the halfway of the halfway, like heading towards the equinox. I love the equinox. So great reminder that it's Imbolc. That's great.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's a day that's near and dear to my heart. So I'm glad to be sharing it with you. And that leads us into that first question. So Carolyn, who are you? And how did life introduce you to this version?
Right. Who am I and how did you? Yeah. I mean, listen, this question, I heard it in the intro. So I'm contemplating it. And I guess I'm split between, I need to ask you a clarifying question. Mm-hmm. Do you mean who am I in space and time, like moving through the universe as we all are in multiple incarnations? Who am I in this version, like now? Or is it like, in this lifetime, this one lifetime, at this age, 50, who am I and what's that version? Which version are you looking for? Like,
I love both versions because I think that, so I've never had anybody ask me this follow-up question before, and I love it because I feel like at midlife, there is this awakening to, I've been here before. I've done this before. Things feel familiar. Oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing in this life. And so I think there's this beautiful intersection between those two things of like, who are you in this incarnation and who are you as the person moving through the universe? And how do those intersect for you?
Right. Well, like, geez. Okay. In this life, I mean, here I am at 50. So who am I? I mean, I'm the same me, who's been moving through space and time in this lifetime. God, I sound in this lifetime, Lisa.
No, you're speaking my language, sister.
These are the things that I'm constantly contemplating. So I guess that's front of mind. So I'd say, yeah, it's like a constant revealing of who you are. And you're almost like revisiting who you are constantly. It's not like you turn 50 or hit, perimenopause and you're like, oh, I'm a completely different person. You're still you, but you're starting to like understand parts of you that may never change, parts of you that are changing always. And you maybe I guess the challenge now, as I'm meeting myself now, you didn't ask what the challenge was, but I'm contemplating it. It would be to, I guess, some level of acceptance. And also, if there are things you don't accept, to really, you want to change them, now's the time. Like, let's go, man. So a little of that. And then I think cosmically, this version of myself, I'm like, woof. I mean, I really do think, I can't imagine this is only our first time, all of us here. Like, I really do think there's some sort of universal energy. So I don't know what those incarnations are or would have been. I don't have any theories on that. But I'd say in this one, I guess we're just still working on all the things we all collectively have to work on, and we'll continue to be presented with them lifetime after lifetime. Anyway, so this version of me is going like, oh, well, this is a pretty interesting one. Like in the scheme of how it could go, I'm like, yeah, I'm good.
Yeah.
Right. Like still lots to work on. But I don't know, what a bizarre time to be alive. So yeah.
It really is. It's a very interesting and bizarre time to be alive. And there are many things that you said there that I want to pull up. So in the other part of my life, I am actually I'm a menopause coach. So I work with women who are in this transition, and I am in it myself. So it's all very real and, practical to my daily life. And the way I approach it is, this is a time of great liberation if we can position it for ourselves in that way, right? It's not the story that's been provided to us.
Yeah.
Actually, there's really not a lot of story that is provided about this. And when we start talking about your show a little bit more, there's something I really want to say about that came up for me while I was watching the show. And it also is a time that's why I said it's this great intersection, right? Because we are starting to have more space, right? We've been running this marathon, in my experience anyway. I've been running a marathon completely blind to everything around me because I've been so focused on the trajectory forward.
Yeah.
And suddenly I have this time where there is more space for my brain and my heart and my soul to open up and think about things in new and different ways. And that's why it's a big part of why I feel like this time is a time of liberation. Are you experiencing that in any way?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's both. I think on the one hand, there is this spaciousness and there is this liberation and a moment of contemplation. Say, well, wait, what am I running towards? And wait, hold up a sec. Like, what do I really want to do? And how do I want to do it? And then at the other, I mean, I guess the counterpoint to that is you're like, oh God, there's light, like life is finite and running towards something. And then you're finally like, oh, I think I've got my footing. You're like, oh, fuck, man, it's getting harder. Like in a physical way, body strength and muscle and, insomnia and all the things that come with, perimenopause and mood swings and all of that. It's like, oh, just when you start to get a handle. So there is that spaciousness and really a beautiful time of life. But also you're then faced with a new set of challenges that maybe weren't present in the first half. And it's like, oh God.
Yeah. Yeah. And how do we empower ourselves through that? And for me, what I'm finding, some of it is reconnecting to the prepubescent human I was, reconnecting to that girl.
Yeah.
And that girl was deeply present at the 1988 Olympics. And so when that was a core piece of your show, I felt myself light up. And actually just last night, I went back and listened to David Foster, the 1988 Olympic themes. Dun, dun, dun,
Of course.
Yeah. I went back and I replayed it and I was listening to it, and it was a time machine. I instantly dropped back into that body in the space where I was in the opening in the opening ceremony. And that sense of energy from that girl was so powerful. I was trying to, now I'm working on like pulling that forward as a fire for this incarnation that I am at the moment. And so what was your experience of that? And why was it so critical to bring into the show?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we're always trying to reconcile all the parts of ourselves. And yeah, that part of yourself that's just, pre-puberty. For me, I think I was 14 when I saw the Olympics, when I watched the 88 Olympics. So a little different, probably a little more self-conscious and all that stuff. But I do know that joyful time of like you're 9, 10, 11, like I was talking
Yeah,
to a friend.
I was 11.
Okay, 11. And I was talking to a friend yesterday. We were out for lunch, and we're like, both of us were like, God, when we were little girls, we had like dirty face. I always had like my brother said I had like a split milk mustache everywhere, like, skin knees and just whatever. So we can later speak to that. Yeah, that part of ourselves for sure, bringing that forward. I love that idea. And so in my show, it was sort of reconciling that 14-year-old self. Yeah. And when I watched the Olympics, I mean, again, this is pre-internet, right? So we're not scrolling on our phones. We're not being told after like you can't sort of miss it. And you might be able to get a recap, on the 6 o'clock news, but no, you wouldn't be able to see the full performance again and feel the energy. And so it was like we were all glued to the TV set. Like that's what it was. And I felt that energy, and I had friends who were in Calgary, and you just sort of, wished, of course, to be there. But it was so exciting and such a great cast of characters. So that 14-year-old in me who loves that kind of stuff was just like completely enthralled. And of course, Katarina Witt, like, God.
It was such a powerful cast of characters. And when you were describing the experience of Katarina Witt for you, it was Kurt Browning for me. I had the same. When you played the clip of his expo show of Sign Your Name Across My Heart, I was like, my heart stopped because it immediately took me back to that moment. And a girlfriend of mine and I went to see Stars on Ice that year when he actually performed that routine.
You saw that live with the chair and the...
Yes, I did.
Outrageous. That had such an impact because I didn't specifically remember that routine until our editors, were looking up, support material for the doc. And I was like, oh my God, obviously I'd seen it because I wanted to have a chair on stage. I wanted the fedora. I wanted Kurt Browning, Katarina Witt. And you realize, the media had planted this whole I think it was also like Alberto Tomba, the singer, and Katarina Witt was supposed to, be involved or something. But because they were the two hottest people at the Olympics. But like the Kurt Browning, Katarina Witt, like these plays, they were staged for us. And I obviously saw that because I'm like, that routine, that expo routine or whatever in 89, it definitely informed my routine. And it was only after the fact, looking back, going like, I must have seen that.
Yeah. Because as soon as you pulled that chair out on the ice and you sat on it, I was like, oh, it's Kurt. This is what's happening right now. Yeah. And there was such magic in that time. And I'm wondering if it was it the cast of characters, and was it just the presence that we had to have to be part of that? Or there is some sort of chemistry that happened at that time that I have never been able to exactly put my finger on.
And I also wonder, is it possible? I mean, I think there was exceptional chemistry with the skaters and that cohort of skaters.
Yes.
There really was. They were superstars. They were, flying all over the globe, and being chased by paparazzi in my mind. I don't know. They were huge, larger than life. But then I also think of that age when you're not like out partying with your friends necessarily. I wasn't anyway. I'm not drinking. I don't have a boyfriend. I'm not doing anything like that. So really the world that is presented you on TV, those are your superstars. Those are the people you're idolizing, and there aren't sort of internet influencers or anything at that point. And I think I liken it a bit to Saturday Night Live, because I think around that same time, the people I was idolizing were like Jan Hooks, Nora Dunn, Victoria Jackson, like that crew on that cast. And I'm like, oh, same age. Again, I'm roughly that age. So it must be just that time. The people who influenced us at that time become the ones that are sort of unshakable in our minds. I don't know.
Yeah, it is. It's really interesting. And even the clips of Sandra Bezic by the fire.
Yeah. So good, right?
So good. And I had such a visceral memory of it. Like it immediately put me back into the childhood home I lived in at the time, of having the fireplace going, of sitting with my mom. And for me, that is another really powerful thing, because I lost my mom at 52. So my youngest was not quite a year. And going back into that time with you through that show was this beautiful sense of connection with her, because it was something that we did together, right? And my godmother and my grandmother, and it was this beautiful, like, matrilineal thing that we had. And it's just really, it was so visceral. And that, like, those clips of Sandra just did it. It was just immediate.
Like, there it is. There's that time. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, I hear you. I hear you. Yeah. Like my mom, I mean, I watched the Olympics in my aunt's living room, but my mom, like, we would have been, watching the Olympics, of course, all of that. Like we watch, Princess Diana get married, to
Yes.
Charles. Like, so
Yeah.
again, these times with our mothers, these TV events, that was part of, the time. And I lost my mom a few years ago too. And it's just, and that was part of also, which something that kind of woke me up a bit to, like, what do you want to create and what do you want to do? And you've lost the most important person to you. Okay, well then who cares now? Like, let's go. It's,
Yeah. And that's actually one of the things I wanted to ask you about, is the intersection of grief and creativity and challenge.
God, grief, creativity, and challenge. I mean, grief, my God, it has moved through so much of my life and my work in ways, sometimes obviously, in other ways where I didn't even know it was, and it was there. Like, I didn't really even understand what a presence my father, who passed away when I was a young child, was going to have in this show. I didn't, it's been so long. And then when he kept sort of appearing in different ways and in conversation and stuff, I was like, wow, he really is present in this time. And around creativity, I think it's tapping in. It's okay to tap into those emotions. And if you want to tap into the big joyful emotions, I think you have to be able to tap into the other ones. I don't think you get to really compartmentalize and feel them fully. So, and I did learn in therapy that when you open one grief folder, you open up kind of all of them. So that's really learning how to open that folder without becoming overwhelmed is hard, and how to use it and honor it in your work, and other times to say, oh, you can sit over here. You don't have to take, you don't have to be in the driver's seat. You can sort of be back there, and that's okay too.
Yeah, absolutely. I found it becomes another part of your heart. So it's always beating there with you. And it's how we choose to move into it. Because sometimes I find there was a freedom that came with losing my mom, which sounds odd, but we had a great relationship, but her expectations were very, very high of living a very traditional life. And so I was a teacher for 20 years, and I resigned in June because I could not do the system anymore. And I keep thinking, thank you. But if she had still been here,
right,
I am not sure I would have made that choice, because I would not have wanted to disappoint her. So there was this, like, freedom of creativity for me that came from that. And at the same time, she was this firecracker who I thought, I can take her torch that she didn't quite get to finish with.
Yeah.
And I can light it in a new way and do some generational healing.
Wow.
Yeah. Did you feel any of that in the creation of the show?
Absolutely. And I mean, my mom had dementia, Alzheimer's, so it was time for her to go. It's very emotional. Sorry.
No, it's what we do here.
But the freedom of her going, then you go, she doesn't want to be that way. Like, that's no one wants to live that way. So you go, okay. Yeah. And then you're like, okay, well, you're able to move forward and you're not, because you really are a caregiver until then.
Yes.
And then to sort of say, okay, that's not what it is, and to let them go, hard, horrible. And then also there is a freedom. Yeah. And to just sort of now take the love and support that you had and keep that. And then, of course, their doubts and, their fears. My mom had, doubts and fears, but she was actually, she was pretty remarkable in that she had a lot of, struggles. She didn't care for school, my academia, those types of things. And so when I was in school, she was like, as long as you do your best, that's all I care about, and then I wanted to be a lawyer. And so, of course, this thrilled her, right? I was going to be a lawyer. And then when I said, no, I want to, pursue acting and theater and performance. And she got really upset and like, what, do you want to be off Broadway for the rest of your life? Like, she really had a hard reaction to it because I think she was invested in, her daughter achieving something, that way. And then she came back to me, I don't know how long after, a week after, not even that long after that argument. And she said, I'm really sorry. I am putting all my fears and my insecurities onto you. Of course, follow your passion. I love you, whatever you want to do. I'm here. I'm really just putting onto you the fears that I have of not being enough and spending a whole life struggling in the arts. So I really appreciated that she reflected and she shared that with me. And that went a long way to know that she fear and yet went through it and said, go for it. Live your life. I'm with you. I'm here for you. So that was pretty amazing.
Yeah. What a gift of self-awareness to be able to model for you.
Yeah.
That's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, that was really remarkable. She was a very spiritual woman, very like in tune with those things and where she didn't necessarily have self-confidence in certain areas, she was able to really give that to us as her children. Yeah.
And again, it's that sense of freedom. There's something I love about knowing that her fire, my mom's fire, is in the collective consciousness now.
Right.
There's something really healing in that.
Yeah.
So one of the other things I really wanted to know is, what was it like the first moment you had eyes on David Peltier and Ekaterina Gordieva?
Do you mean that Zoom call or in person?
In person.
Yeah, that was, listen, I was terrified. I was like, oh God, here we go. And then there was something about, walking in, and I think they were both still in their jackets, and they had to do the medical or whatever, classic TV stuff beforehand. And then I come up and I think they were both sort of on their phones. So it really wasn't like at that moment, I was like, oh God, here's David Peltier. Like they were regular, they were people just like us. And here they are. And knowing what I was going to be asking of them, like inside, I'm like, oh God, here we go. And he's such a fun and funny guy, but also a really serious, no nonsense guy. He kind of holds both.
Yeah.
And that was, he's like a man, I'm like, oh God, I'm in the presence of a real man. Terrifying. And I think I even stutter a little when I'm talking to them. And that was just me. I'm like trying to give them an offering of socks. And just like, oh God, here we go. So he was definitely intimidating. That was terrifying, and yeah. And after I showed them the routine, so, I did it up there and I did, oh God, that was so humiliating. Like to have to give it your all and knowing, so of course the comedian in me knows this is good. Like this will be fun. But the human in me is like, this is a nightmare. I don't want to act this out for them. This is horrifying. But we knew, it's part of the story. So of course and they have to see it to understand. Yes. So I do that. And as soon as I was done, we don't have this in the show, but he was like, taxi. Like, I'm out of here. Like you can see it on their faces watching like, oh no. So yeah, he was such a character, and we grew a lot in that time together.
Yeah, it was really fascinating to watch. And I will tell you, I felt the discomfort of that when you were acting it in my body. Like I was sweating. I was watching it and I was sweating, and I could see the look in his face. And I was like, I can only imagine what this is feeling like. But also that dichotomy of knowing like, oh, this is going to play really well.
Knowing that, so you have this split of like one person who's making television and that type of, and another side that's living a dream and trying to hold both and like internally cringing at yourself, like just like, oh, but there's something, I mean, and this is sort of a midlife thing as well, being faced with fear, and you just have to go through it. And especially when you're now contractually bound and there's cameras and like people have flown in.
Yeah.
Be like, actually, I don't want to do that. Now let's just have a drink and go out and talk about the Olympics. Like, no,
But we're doing this.
We're doing it. So there's something about that you can't turn back. You have to. So just keep going through the fear. And there is something pretty amazing. I mean, it sounds cliche, but you follow the fear, go through it, and then whole new realities and experiences open up that you couldn't have imagined if you'd backed away from it. Right?
Yeah. Which is what is so incredible about the vision that you had, because you literally created something from nothing. Well, divine inspiration.
Yeah.
Right. Like, there's that piece of it. Yeah. And the midlife thing that I really connected to as I was just rewatching the show again, is that up until this point, it feels like I've been like an athlete training with choreography for a goal.
Yes.
And suddenly I reach this space in my life and the choreography is gone.
Mm-hmm.
And there's music and there's creativity still, but there's no choreography. Right. And so when you were talking about improvising, I was like, and that's it. That is this like uncomfortable intersection that I find myself in personally. And I think a lot of people in midlife, where you're so used to the choreography and now it's our turn to improvise.
Right. That's so interesting. Whereas I think for me, I've lived so much of my life in improvisation, like trained in it at Second City, but also that's sort of been, it's just sort of true to my nature, actually. That I'm not someone who's like, oh, what am I doing in 5 years, 10 years? Like I really have never really lived my life that way. And so oddly for me, it's almost converse. Like, it's like, I've just went, and now it's time to choreograph. So people are like, how are we doing it? I'm like, can't we just feel it out and see how it goes? Like, so I actually think maybe we're experiencing mirror version.
Yeah, a mirror experience. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so when you were talking about like, yeah, let's just feel it out on the ice. I was like, yes, that's my life now. That's how I feel all the time. Like, well, I don't know, let's give this a shot and see what happens.
Yeah.
But what was the driving force to actually make this happen? Right. Because I've had those moments too, where I hear a song and I'm like, I can see what's going on in this music, but I've never, made a show about it.
Yeah. I think a series of steps forward, anywhere from hearing it, having the vision and going like, oh, that's a lot, to like being outside and like jumping around the apartment and just trying to figure out what am I seeing and like, how would I land a jump, to saying, well, what if I do take it onto stage? Like, because I am a performer. So it's not like it's within possibility for me. It's not the same as, someone who is an engineer or something who works privately on, I don't even know, what do engineers do? Build things, design things.
My husband's an engineer, I could tell you, but it's not that exciting.
Right. So like someone who's just not a performer necessarily. So because I'm a performer, then it's sort of natural. It's a natural possibility, or it's within the realm of possibility to try to take it in front of an audience and test out an idea. So then that, was a next step. And that also was revelatory. Like my girlfriend had asked me to do stand-up at her book launch, and I, in like 2017 or something. And I was like, oh, stand-up, I don't have anything to say. Like I do it sometimes. I'm not really a stand-up, but I can, but I find it quite terrifying. And I'll do it, but sometimes. And it wasn't until she was talking to another artist for a piece, and she wanted a lighting cue and sound cue. And I was like, wait a second. I can do a performance art piece instead. And then I just sat up. I was sort of lying down kind of uninspired and sat up and was like, oh my God, I'm going to put this on its feet. Like, and so again, I think maybe midlife, I I find the word permission such an interesting word, and it's an ongoing contemplation. I have that word. And do we give ourselves permission? Do we need someone else to give us permission to try something on stage? Do we give our, where does that come from? And so in answer to your question, it was a series of taking steps and then another step. And next thing you know, you're like, oh, I've come pretty far with this idea. I've now done it in front of an audience. I've traveled with it. I'm now telling the audience I'm going to do it. Well, what if I did do it? And how could I do it? And I mean, luckily for me as a TV maker, that's within my world. So again, it's not like someone who runs their amazing bakery or something, they could imagine a giant bakery. This is horrible. Well,
Go with it.
My wheelhouse of stuff that I can consider. And so teaming up with Zach Russell and the two of us really digging deep and trying to figure out how do you convey this? And also the sense of, even if it goes wrong, it's still okay.
Yeah.
Right. And that will make it funny, and it will be, the twists and turns will be what they are. And so that became a really interesting creative fire and safety net at the same time. Take chances, because whatever happens will be interesting at the very least,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the journey of getting the song certainly is a great example of that, right? Of the creative fire of the song that you and May wrote.
I mean, and that was just so ridiculous. But May was leaving, 2 hours later, and I got it in my head. No, we need to have a backup song. And so, of course, did we need a backup song? Empirically, one could argue no. But in myself, and I'm setting the rules of what I need. I'm like, I need one. We need one. And so the time crunch was real. The pressure was real. And trying to write a song in 2 hours from nothing with the stings in the right place was brutal. And the breakdown was real.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And then, then of course we had it. And that became, again, another interesting part of the journey, and also sort of safety net, something for us to have in case. But thank God we did not have to have the skaters.
I was trying to imagine them skating to that song, like at the last minute doing that change. And like, again, a David Peltier face, like what
that would have been,
like?
I think realistically what would have happened is they would have skated to the Whitney song in the arena for the audience. We would have done that. And then in post, when we have to air the show, it would have been like, press play on your MP3 player. I don't know what we would have done, or played some other, I'm not sure.
Right.
Luckily, we didn't have to go there, but those were all the contingency plans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then finally, so for the show itself, like, how were you able to stay in your body? Like, going back to the idea of presence, right? Like at the 88 Olympics, we were all so present. And I can imagine there would be this temptation to be like, this is actually happening, I'm out. Were you able to stay present in your body for that?
That's a great question. I kind of toggled between the two. Sometimes I was fiercely present because I had no choice. Like, in order to stand on skates and not fall and answer questions and, actually choreograph with these elite gold medalists, like, I had to be present. So one part of it forced me into absolute presence. But then another part that is like the 14-year-old especially, or that person still can't believe that this happened. The person in the living room watching Katya Gordieva and Sergei Grinkov skating the most perfect pairs routine. No, did I choreograph Katya Gordieva? I still know that girl cannot believe that. In fact, that she will never believe that. Those don't know how to reconcile those two things. So I toggle between the two. And then I've got the brain that's a producer brain. And then I've me who just has to do the thing brain. And then I've got my heart and fears, like, self that's not a performer. That's just a person who is scared and excited and, all the things, and cringing on the inside and, at times. So I had to hold all of those. So I guess, presence, and I think both, toggling between. But the demands of the series really required me to be quite present.
Yeah, I can imagine, because there are a lot of moving parts, right? There's so many things I didn't even consider, right? Like, lighting design and how that works in choreography. Something I was not
Never
even.
thought about it. Never thought about it. And it's like, huh? Well, what do you mean? Okay. And we had like these meetings. I mean, the series shows, 6 episodes, but my God, all the other meetings and the people who had to come up with Excel spreadsheets and Google Docs and all the people tracking down, the IOC Olympic Committee footage. And God, there was so much work for so many people to make this happen. And we as an audience get to watch this one part of it. But like lighting design, yeah, there's how do you do that? And you've got a limited budget and in limited number of lights and
And Hayes.
No Hayes. I mean, honestly, if Sandra Bezic and Joan Sassani was there as well, and as who directed the skating footage, and they, I mean, listen, I was following their lead. They're saying more Hayes, yeah,
Sure.
I don't know. No, don't ask me. I don't know.
And then that crowning moment of everything coming together and you and Katerina Witt laying together on the ice.
Oh gosh, I know.
Yeah.
How did she agree? How did she listen, I'm still blown away by that. And that she was such a good sport, really not understanding what necessarily, it's hard to explain the show.
Yeah.
But she has, I've learned, part of her personality is just she's daring and she's brave and she's fun. And she, of course, wanted to see all her friends and contemporaries who were there. And she and Sandra are great friends. And so she's someone who's like, yeah, I'm canceling when I'm coming, and then, lay down on the ice with me, not knowing this was going to be the final shot of the series and everything. So that was mind blowing. That was wild.
Yeah, it was so deeply satisfying to watch. That is the final scene was just it was really the best way to bring it all together. That and seeing all of those incredible personalities back together in one space, Underhill and Martini and Brian Orser and all of these people who there was a time where I was convinced I was marrying Kurt Browning. So
he's so great. He's such a good sport. He's so fun. To be able to say to him, you're the muse, but you're not actually the one who's going to do it. But you're he's so generous and kind with his time. And he'll still send me, the odd, text or video or whatever, what he's up to. And he's amazing. And they all love each other and they all care about each other and have been there through all the sort of vicissitudes of life. So that was really exciting. I was just excited to get to see them all together.
Yeah. And to experience that sense of community, right? Especially from some of the cues I could tell in the show, it was pretty pretty in COVID, end of COVID.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And us needing that sense of community so desperately and being able to see that and be part of that. Was that a healing experience?
Absolutely. It was. And it was sort of like we created this magical other world that we all lived in. I mean, and then there's the making of the TV, which is just stress. But then within this magical world, yeah, we got to just live in that. And I always think there's so much magic that can happen, when you're able to bookend an experience, even if you go on a holiday or you're with some friends or you're working on a project, if within these parameters, I'm allowed to play, I'm allowed to have fun, I'm allowed to forget the rest of the world for this amount of time. And within this sort of these bookends, I find there's so much liberation in that. So I think that's one of the reasons the show has that vibe, because we all gave up some control in that time, took a leap of faith together. And while that's really hard to sustain for a lifetime, in certain pockets of time, it's actually really, extraordinarily fun and liberating, right?
Yeah, that's beautiful. Have you had another hit of inspiration? Is there another routine coming?
Listen, routines now come. Now I can sort of, it was, it took a while to even understand what is choreography. It's movement, emotion and movement and conveying us, a sense of what's happening for this character or story. And So yes, potentially, maybe. I haven't been struck by another routine, but I certainly have heard other songs that I think would be great.
Yeah.
And Sandra and I kick around ideas all the time, and that's been really fun. But what was I going to say? Yeah, I'm being inspired by some other weird stuff. And so again, midlife, if we bring it back, to your show and this transformational time, can you say, yeah, you know what? Let's take another kick at something odd and weird and see what happens. Those are the things that get me excited, and if we can back to that younger self, those younger selves that we all had, or not we all, I don't think we're all different, but there was, hopefully for many, that sense of freedom at that age, and those friendships and, the creativity. And I was putting on plays and doing, dances to putting on the Ritz and
yes.
All the stuff was there. It was all there then. And so to be able to embrace that, but have the knowledge of being midlife and what you can actually create and do with it is kind of an exciting nexus.
It really is. You just brought up this really vivid memory of, I had a group of friends, we used to put together plays to the mini pops.
Oh, yeah, mini pops, yeah.
Yeah, all the time. It was one of our favorite things to do, was to put on these shows and be so deeply in our bodies. And that was one thing I wanted to just, as we're wrapping up, just say, it was really fascinating to watch the way you moved in your body from the beginning of the show until the end, and the way that you were able to embody being a choreographer and have that vocabulary in such an incredible way. Like, it was viscerally noticeable in the way you moved by the end of the show.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I guess, the more time you spend doing something and the more familiar you get with it. And also that thing of, as time is crunching, I don't know if you found this, I find in life, when you have to become so focused, you have to step up in a way. And so I think that comfort of doing what am I trying to say? Just there isn't room for fear anymore. And maybe that translates into how you move your body, and you are comfortable. And when I watch the series, I'm like, oh my God, by the end, I'm not wearing my helmet. Like, I'm not thinking of any of those things. I'm just like, oof, I got to do this. And so that's sort of that exciting thing that comes with great fatigue. Whatever, you're just too tired to have all your hangups and how, your physical fears, and I may be more willing to take chances.
Yeah.
And
I think that is a really beautiful sort of metaphor for the breakdown, to be able to shine, right, in the way that you really want to. So thank you so much for this experience.
Thank you.
It has brought, in the midst of, we alluded to at the beginning of this interview, it's been a very long gray stretch for us here in Canada. And this is just, for everybody listening, just watch it. Your heart and soul will thank you. And it will have you. I made my husband, after we finished watching the last episode, I was like, hey, can you do that thing where you hold your arms out and I'm just going to jump into them and you catch me like a fish, like that one? Okay, we're going to do that, okay?
Did he?
He went like this, and then I was like, no, forget it. Let's just do the one where I jump on your front and then you spin me around and I stick my leg out. And we did that one.
Okay, good. That's great. That's great.
It was really
great. Everyone, take a shot.
Watch the show, try the lifts, feel the joy. Thank you so much for this today.
Thank you for having me. That was a really, really, really fun conversation.
Thank you for being part of the Transforming 45 community. Your support means the world to us. Stay tuned for more juicy episodes, and remember to keep showing up to your life with the love and magic you deserve. Until next time.